Hi, I'm Mina Malik Hussain and this is The Coffee Table, and as you know, we have a wonderful show lined up for you today. I'm so excited because today, after so long, we are finally going to be talking about the wonderful, really sort of, I think, academic, intellectual, aesthetic delight that is the Lahore Biennale, which we have had the very good fortune to have been enjoying 2 times over and look forward to seeing much more of. And today joining me on set is the wonderful Qudsia Rahim, who is of course the co-founder of the Lahore Biennale Foundation. She's a former associate professor at the National College of Arts. She's on the board of the Shakir Ali Museum and Lahore Sangat, and as you know, clearly is very much on the scene. And joining me from a distance over the waves of the internet is Ayesha Jatoi, who is a gold medalist alumni of the National College of Arts, where she has also been visiting faculty for over 10 years. She works with the Lahore Biennale Foundation on its publications arm, or with the publications arm, and of course is a wonderful artist in her own right. Hello, welcome to the show, ladies.
Hello, hi.
Across from the sofa. It's always so nice to have people physically present. Hi, Ayesha.
Hi, Ayesha. How are you?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm so happy to have both of you here today because I have so many questions and I'm really looking forward to all the answers. So let's sort of start at the beginning, as I want to say always, at the beginning. So, Qudsia, what is a biennale? Because I know that it happens, it's like an art event that happens in many cities around the world. Like Venice, for example, is this really famous one, and there's a Sharjah one, and now there's a Lahore one. But what is it?
In simple words, a biennial is an event that happens every 2 years. It started in Venice in 1800s.
Oh.
Yes, so it has a long history, and Venice Biennial is still one of the most revered biennials. But we see a lot of other cities and countries hosting the biennials as well. This is a way to pay homage to the local artists, connect them to the global conversations, a way to bring various thought processes that are happening in various environments or various, bubbles. We bring them together and have a larger conversation. Yeah. And I think it's very important that different countries and different nations and cities have them. I think it's very essential because it brings about different conversations in every space, right? Yeah. And then all together, if you look at the larger breadth of the various biennales that happen in the world, you see that lots of beautiful conversations are happening in various parts of the world, which are very important, relevant locally, relevant internationally.
So for example, if let's say the Lahore Biennale is in Lahore, does that mean that it only has people from Lahore and surrounding environs, or is it a sort of much broader kind of scope?
So a biennial is named after a city. A city within a country. So like the Lahore Biennale. So a lot of times this is misunderstood as perhaps it's only for Lahore or people of Lahore.
No outsiders allowed. Stay out.
And certainly not the case, right? The idea is that Lahore naturally lends itself to a space. It's a city of culture, heritage, architecture, beautiful architecture, poetry, literature, film, music, you name it, right? So it naturally lends itself as a city to host a biennial, right? So having it in Lahore made sense. Inviting people from all over the world to Lahore makes sense, and of course throughout Pakistan. So it is a global event. It is not a national event. It's not a city's event. It's a global event that just happens to happen in Lahore.
Yeah, so sort of Lahore is like the heart, or maybe let's say the sort of epicenter of all of this activity.
Correct.
So Ayesha, as a practicing artist, and you have shown all over the world, yay, well done. Do you feel, and we were talking about this sense of how a biennale brings together different artist practices, and sort of, from what I understand, it's sort of like fostering a sense of community between artists. Do you feel that maybe in Pakistan, do you feel like artists are working in some isolation, and events like biennales help to kind of, build those connections between practices?
Basically, in Pakistan, I think we have a bit of a unique model because we have a lot of people that graduate and then go back into the academy.
Okay.
So the National College, for example, is a great place. I mean, you can compare it to our neighbors. artists don't necessarily isolate themselves as much because they go back into and they give back. So there's a great dialogue and a continuity. But of course, things like the Biennale, where we don't have state patronage for the arts, is a great initiative to bring another platform and to also bring international artists together. And it's great for students who are studying to have that exposure, to not necessarily see installations and artworks in textbooks or on the internet, but to see it. To have, Qudsia has been doing a great job of actually bringing the artists over from abroad to for their research trips. So they've been interacting with local artists. They've been going to their studios. So there's a great kind of ecosystem that's being developed.
And you've been with the Biennale from the beginning, and you've been working with their publications arm of it, and you've got these wonderful books, you know, that I sort of hoard greedily, you know. It's like, oh look, this is all Ayesha's doing. So tell me more about the publication. So what do they entail? What kind of publications are coming out of the Biennale?
Because we just started, our publications were, for the first edition, were limited to the guidebook.
Which is this?
Little experience, yes. But I think the really good thing we did in this guidebook is we made it so we have Urdu and English. So it's not just because the art was critiqued to speaking to the same 20 people who bother to show up or can only access English. So what we've done is had this in Urdu, and all the text on the ground is also meant to be bilingual. I hope the Biennale expand that later to regional languages as well. But I think it's a good start. The second edition, we had a great curator, and she had a great vision. So we did a bunch of other smaller publications by Shahzad Dao and Sabah Khan, etc. So we kind of went one step further, and hopefully, I don't know about this Corona situation, but maybe the next pub can go even further and have a very extensive sort of a coffee table book or something.
Yeah, but you know, these are so beautiful. And then I've got one on my coffee table because I'm like, look, it's so pretty. It's got all these wonderful things. But I think that Ayesha's point about the text being in Urdu and English is very important, because that does speak to the sort of ethos or the philosophy behind something like a Biennale, which is to kind of make art accessible to everybody and sort of surmount this idea that art is very highbrow and only certain people understand it, and what does it mean? Like, I feel like people are nervous in the same way about poetry, for example, because, you know, literature background, but they're like, oh, it's so difficult, and it's only if you're really educated you'd understand it. But that's really not true. Everybody connects on different levels.
Yeah. I think we are, as a nation, very in tune to poetry and literature and arts. If you remember, like, I know that in my family, you know, everybody is reciting a, you know, मौके के लिहाज से एक शेर आ जाता है,
for all seasons, you know.
So we are quite rich in our, you know, intellectual resources. The important thing is for us from the very, very beginning is the fact that our local audience, this is a biennial that we want the city to host and city take ownership.
Yeah.
And so for those reasons, it's very important to engage with the local audience. And having that incorporated language, we would have, there are certain times I know that we created programs around involving other languages of our region as well, because I think it's important, just trying to reach out, just trying to make sure that everybody feels comfortable and invited
and welcome
is part of the entire process that we are working towards, right? Yeah. So I think the language is very important. Ayesha's contribution is not alone with the publications, but she actually helps us, advises us in various other aspects also. Just to looking at the publication, this is in a way the heart of the biennial, because at the end of the day, when everything is all wrapped up and gone.
Done and dusted, painted over back.
This is what remains. And then these are various conversations that she has with the artists, each artist individually, independently, and then creates these kind of conversations, and the publications come about. So in a way that this is a guidebook, but in a way this is a soul into the various artworks that were exhibited now, once upon a time.
Yes, you know, back when, in, you know, the year 2016.
So there's certain places where more conversation needed to happen. So chapbooks with, again, the most amazing curator, Huril Kasmi, who was curator for the second edition, with her in the various conversations with the artists, and Ayesha having these conversations with the artists, created these chapbooks, which was, again, a very valuable resource that we have post-biennial. As
something to hold on to. You know, we're going to take a very quick break and come back to this fascinating conversation. Stay with us. Hi, welcome back to the coffee table. We're talking about the Lahore Biennale with, surprise, the co-founder of the Lahore Biennale, Qudsia Rahim, and Ayesha Jatoi, who is an advisor to the Biennale Foundation as well. And it is very fun. I'm having so much fun. I love it. You know, all the art, you know, it's just really giving me life. So now tell me, there's the Biennale itself, and then there is the foundation, the Lahore Biennale Foundation.
Absolutely.
So what is the difference?
So the foundation has a year-round calendar of events,
right?
And it performs year-round. I think it's a beautiful combination between the two, and the Biennale happens every 2 years, right? So the time that we dormant and we planning and we, you know, putting all the, you know, pegs in places, the foundation continues to have a dialogue with the rest of the continues to have a dialogue, right?
Right.
An exterior-looking arm of the foundation. I think it's very important because we get a lot of information from these public programmings to better understand what we are doing, bring opportunities to the artists. So it's just not only doing the biennial, but actually contributing in other ways beyond the biennial.
Sort of taking the momentum that the actual event has and sort of taking it forward.
And then it is a way for us to have a conversation with the public, right? So in various capacities, through various programs, and I think this gives us insight of how we can improve, how we can work further, how these biennials or various public programs can then be shaped and reshaped, and I think that that's very essential. We're very lucky to have a foundation as part of the biennial, because then we're not only doing this but also are able to do a lot more.
Yeah, and it's a form of institution building, really. Because, you know, like, again, there's a pandemic. Who would know if the Biennale was like 6 months later in the year? It would not have happened.
15 days.
Oh my God.
we were very lucky, very lucky.
Right. So I have to say, like, the universe was smiling upon you.
It was a blessing.
Yes. So Ayesha, tell me, I know that a lot of your own practice is correct me if I'm wrong, but they're installation based. So for example, I'm thinking of the time where you put laundry on a fighter plane in the middle of an intersection, and it was just there, and people came and they were like, what's going on here? Or your installation where you are sort of sitting in a space and folding white clothes. So do you feel like that's the kind of piece that does really well in an environment like a Biennale? So I think what I'm basically asking you is about the kind of nature of art in a public space.
Those installations turned out to be performance art pieces. The first China one was a bit of hit and run, and it was meant to be an installation. Because it was recorded and because the public had such a strong reaction, turned out to be a performance piece, and it's been widely circulated. I feel like I only create these kind of performance pieces or installations when I'm very moved by a certain event to produce like that. But most of my work is based on paper, and it's about miniature photography. And I did one other piece, which was a billboard near Data Darbar, which said, how many women can you see right now? In Urdu. That also elicited this really strong reaction. And most of these were done, and one other thing, and most of these were done in workshops for public art workshops.
Okay.
Now, we used to have these informal sort of events going on, but I think the Biennale really kind of made a great platform to be able to do public art projects in a much bigger scale for a much wider audience. I think the success of the Biennale is the sites that Qudsia chose the first time around, and what Hur Al-Qasimi chose for the second edition. The sites were incredible in that it brought Lahoris, which don't normally go to those spaces, back into them to rediscover. And also for us, in a way, to reach out to people in the old forgotten city, to go back to, spaces, and for the city to come together in a way, like you said, without hierarchy, class, and language, and to be connected with this common kind of, like a spiritual or feeling-based thing, which everyone can connect to. Yeah. So, yes, the Biennale is extremely important for public art in Pakistan. And it always happened informally, but the Biennale has kind of made it, kind of given it that infrastructure.
Yeah, yeah. So Qudsia, tell me more about it. So I know that for the first Biennale, you were the one who was curating it. And then for the second one, you had Hur Al-Qasimi curating it. So first tell me about Hur, and then tell me about sites. Because it's quite exciting, it's a very good story.
Well, we were very lucky to have her curate the second Biennale.
But who is she?
She's very important in the art world. I think she is a very, very young interpret, gentle soul who occupies a very important place in the art world because she does a lot of work. She's the director of the Sharjah Art Museum and the foundation. She started the Sharjah Foundation. So she has organized a lot of thinking platforms like March meetings and those things. I think it was very important for this region to have these conversations, and Sharjah taking the lead in so many of these. I always had an eye on her and her work for a long time. So the first biennial happened and we were very happy, and then I was introduced to her through a mutual friend. It was a delight to invite her, and it was, she saw some of our work from the first biennial and was, impressed.
Suitably impressed?
Impressed enough to realize, but also
but that's really exciting, that the work that the first Biennale had sort of put together and sort of showcased really impressed somebody like Hur, who was like, wow, this is really exciting. Yeah. And I'd like to work with us.
So this was a very, very, I think the biennial did a lot of good, not only for Pakistan, it did a lot of good for the region because it opened up the region like no other, and only somebody like Hur, who understands the nuances and the threads and then is helping them maintaining or creating those things. I think for somebody like her to do the biennial was incredible. We were extremely fortunate to have a vision, and the way that she invited various artists from the Minasa region or the South Asia. Most of these artists are women artists. Yes. I mean, we had, of course, we recognize that and we appreciate, acknowledge that. Then we also see a lot of Muslim artists. I think a lot of Muslim artists from the region, bringing them together, bringing some of the important conversations that were lost in time or are not taken seriously or taken for granted. I think those kind of things were brought back into conversation by Hur.
It was really fascinating how I feel like, as a layperson, there was that kind of sympathy throughout all the pieces that were curated. And even though, like you said, there were artists from different areas of the world, like it wasn't just South Asia, it was the Middle East. But there were these conversations that one could relate to, and on many levels kind of be like, yeah, that speaks to me. It didn't feel like somebody came from the outside and was kind of impenetrable.
Totally. It's a personality also that how she works, how she operates. It was so fortunate for us to be able to take her to various artist studios and then travel with her and her introducing us to various stakeholders globally. Those kind of things have opened up quite a bit. So many of the artists who are now working with her or working with other, opportunities have come, internationally, which were not there for them before the biennial. So I think in those kind of things, it works very beautifully. Her coming to Pakistan was very good. We got a lot of attention. It's a young biennial. This is our second edition. We're trying very hard.
It's like a lot of hard finding your way. And I think that we were talking about this before, and I thought it was such a wonderful way to put it, that, we basically, the Biennale has sort of gone in, you've ventured into the unimagined. Like you've just created something where something wasn't before. You've made a thing. And
together. So this is not something that I did on my own.
No,
there are lots of people, like Iftikhar Dadi's vision. I think Ayesha and myself, can you call him the godfather?
No, but it's true. It's sort of all of like everyone is better together kind of thing.
Yes.
But tell me more about the sites. And of course, because the Biennale is sort of like Ayesha said, it's centered in the city, and it's the sort of one of the thrusts of it is to draw people out of their kind of, corners of the city where we tend to kind of self-ghettoize ourselves. Oh, I live in Gulbarg, this is where I am. I live in Defense, where I am. I live in Shadra, this is where I am. But to sort of bring those threads together and be like, okay, why don't you now go to the hammam and look inside, a cistern, and be like, wow, and it belongs to everybody,
It belongs to everyone. So that's a good thing to say. It belongs to everybody. I think that's a beautiful sentence. So I think this is what it is. So when it didn't happen overnight, of course, it took me a lot of time to think and contemplate. And then also look at what if Lahore, so one of the questions, there are lots of questions I keep asking myself all the time when I'm working.
Yeah.
But one of the questions when I was looking at the biennial and how and where it happens, of course, we were looking at a lot of international modules where people were doing them in specific locations or those kind of things. And I'm like, okay, if Lahore was supposed to host a biennial, what would it be like?
Yeah.
So, and what is the most successful thing that Lahore had or has, and how do we relate to it? So one of the things that I was trying to do was just see how does one relate to it? And then, of course, Basant comes to mind immediately, right?
Basant.
That
Our late lamented Basant.
That experience, how does one engage with the city of Lahore, which has done that in past, right?
I love the image of Basant because everybody was on the roof. And when you're on the roof, you can see everyone and you can call out to people and you can see across as well, very far down. And I remember Basant on the roof of our family building in Anarkali. And when you're on the roof in a building in Anarkali, you can see all of Mall Road.
Yes.
And you can see the NCA, you can see Linton, you can, everybody is flying kites. It's such a sense of just communal fun.
Yeah. So for that moment in time, even if before that you didn't know your neighbor, now you did.
Yes.
Right? Even if you didn't know the vendors selling stuff, now you did because you're in a different frame of mind. You can talk, you are, casual mood, you can speak to people, strangers.
And you're all engaged in a similar kind of, everyone's doing the same activity together.
Yeah.
So it's not like...
It's a festive thing. It's like, like a big festival that the whole city sits and does. So so my biggest success or my biggest happiness would be that if I was able to, at any given time, we were together able to create a similar experience. So baby steps, but important to get there, right? So the idea was to go and look at locations. So instead of bringing people to art, how can we bring art to the people, right? So that was another thing. So
you put art in spaces where people already are.
People already are.
At like, at roundabouts or, hanging from trees in Lawrence Gardens or people already there. I think that's so great.
Yeah.
The positioning is really important. So I'm like, wow. We're going to take a very quick break whilst I sort of, pleasantly mull this idea. And we will see you in 1 second. Stay with us. Hi, welcome welcome back to the coffee table. We're having a wonderful conversation about the Lahore Biennale with Lahore Biennale Foundation co-founder Qudsia Rahim and advisor to the Biennale and artist Ayesha Jatoi. So Qudsia, tell me, the foundation, and we were talking about the stuff that they do between biennales. And one of them, and I remember, I think this might have been the first kind of public intervention, was a series of really intriguing bus stops around the city. And I remember seeing the first one, it was all like concrete and a tree. And I was just like, is that a bus stop? And I remember seeing people just kind of standing around and looking at it and saying like, do we sit on it? Like, what do we do? And it's so cool because the foundation has done a lot of these interesting things. So how have people responded?
Very well, actually. Our first public outreach or public project was City Within the City. It's a pigeon house, kind of something in front of NCA.
Yes, and it's still there.
It's still there. We just refurbished it and cleaned it up a little bit recently because we have to.
Because the pigeons.
Decaying artwork. Decaying artwork doesn't look very good. At that time I was very scared. When we were building it, I was like, how will people respond? How will what will they
vandalize it? Will they want to?
And the government was quite on us at that time because we're happy to work with you, but how they were also taking a risk with us, looking at contemporary art into public spaces, and we were totally convinced that we will be able to convince and work with them. We did,
and you did.
We did.
They did.
We did, and I think the government's come through very beautifully in so many ways, and recognizing and understanding what we are doing and supporting us in lots of ways.
Great.
So Bus Stops project was another project that we did with the government. The idea again was that before we do the biennial, we try and do some public art because public art was very important to us.
Yeah.
So what does it take to work in public space? Who are the stakeholders? How does one operate? How does one from start to finish do a work so that we could bring the biennial into public spaces, work with these. So these projects worked very beautifully to teach us, the various ways that one can engage, bring these projects and see how people responded. I think the Bus Stops project was very close to me because it was an artwork designed for the people.
By local architects and practitioners.
So it was a project by the people for the people. So I think it was really cool because we were now able to bring something, where there were no bus stops before, but something, an artist designed piece for them to wait, for them to utilize. So it's like money being used for them.
And it's also bringing together so many things. It's bringing together a sense of sustainable development, about what do urban landscapes should look like in the future. How can you combine beauty in a practical way, and again, like sort of making art for everyone, where you don't have to be in a museum to access something that makes you think.
Exactly. Again, you just nailed it.
Oh, thank you very much. It's almost as if I'm a literature student.
Yes, or an artist amongst us.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Oh, look at me blushing away. But Ayesha, as somebody who interacts a lot with students, how have students responded to all of this? And does it excite them as practitioners that there is this kind of, does it feel like a sort of a new avenue that's opened up to the way that they approach their work, or how they are sort of evolving as artists themselves? Like, what's going on there?
I think it's really significant for the students, and I think they'll benefit from further editions also. But we, from the NCA at least, and I know the other colleges and universities also, took busloads of students to the biennale sites in the presence of the curator. So, for example, for Dr. Maria Lukman's show that she did in Mubarak Haveli, which is next to the ACT School of Arts, we took students and we had the curator walk them through. I mean, she is Pakistani, but she's a DPhil from Oxford. So, I mean, to have that opportunity to have the person who's put the show together to explain to the students was phenomenal for them. And they got to see works which was borrowed from different collections, borrowed from abroad. on loan from various foundations, which they wouldn't have access to. So I think it was a great eye-opening experience. But not just students of the National College of Arts. Qudsia had a lot of the government school children come, young children, come in bus loads for that. And to see them walk through the Summer Palace and to look at Shireen Nishat's work, for instance, or Naiza Khan's work, was just, just to see those children responding to that kind of, because it's sounds, it's colors, it's video, it's a moving image. Yeah. So it was really, I think that's when you feel like it's worth it, because children have that kind of unadulterated vision of how they absorb these things.
It's true, it's true. And did you have Yes, carry on.
No, I'm just going to talk about the youth forum in the first biennale, which was on a smaller scale, happened in Lawrence Garden. It was the first time, and the second time around I said to Qudsia, I'd like to do a children's program this time, because I've been collecting a lot of materials from places abroad and from Karachi, in various places in Pakistan, and like old, very local indigenous type of tradition. So I was trying to put together a children's program this time, but we always run out of time. We're always sitting there on the last day wishing, oh, if only we had 2-3 more days. So hopefully, there is a plan to incorporate more programs for children where they're more formally taught certain things, or they have certain exercises, or there's some workbooks. Karachi Biennale did a beautiful little children's activity book in the second edition, I believe. Yeah. So we'll also get there, I think. It's very important to engage students and children with the city, with artwork, and just with, like you said, to come out of their bubbles and to go out there and be part of on the street.
Quite right. And also, I think, especially because at least culturally, it's sadly very common for parents to want their children to do like the sciences or engineering or math, and because they feel like it's a more serious thing to do, and the arts have always been seen as sort of airy-fairy thing, or occupation. But if you can be reading math, but then also be interested in art, like why ever not? And I think that's so exciting for a child to kind of know that there is a whole other world out there of the imagination and of ideas that you can access. And, everything feeds into each other,
I would like to bring a little bit, add a little bit more to what Ayesha had said about the outreach. Outreach is very important to us. If you ask, one of our, objectives is that we want to be one of the 10 million things that happen in the city, not the only thing that happens in the city. I think that's very important to us. And in that, of course, we are doing a lot of programming, a lot of, the Biennale is also done with a lot of thought that, we have collateral events, for example, that we invite other people to actually host events around the same time as the biennial. I think that's one way of adding to the conversation where more people are engaged more, because the biennial can do only so much at one. Right. But then if you want that idea of an extended outreach, then I think various ideas also propagating at the same time, giving that stage to collateral events is very important. We have academic forum, which is also, again, very important.
There's also a research fellowship.
The research fellowships, we have youth forum. We especially work with the students, like Ayesha is saying, workshops, talks with the artists, seminars, their own artist talks, so it's really nice to, for example, the artists, in this case, Imran Ahmed, was actually working with the students, making those small harappa figurines with them, telling them, what it is, or, artist talks with, artists like Ayesha, Zulfikar, who's giving, a bunch of students, public, private, both. So we had over, just for the youth forum, over like 5,000 kids from the public sector come in to see the biennial, that we invited ourselves when, arranged for the buses, and, they came. And
clearly there was that that level of interest.
Yes.
Where kids were coming and engaging and really having like their minds opened up. And how fun, because this is something that Ayesha mentioned earlier in the show, that artists don't work in isolation, and at least here they don't. And how wonderful to put artists in touch with their, with their audience as well. So it's like mutual growth.
Totally. And we saw some beautiful things come out of it, the kind of questions that people are raising. You were talking about how people responded to the artwork. I remember just standing over there looking at Amar Kanwar's video, and a mother and child was standing right next to me, and I'm just looking at the technicalities and just trying to make sure everything is right. And there's a dialogue I came across, and the child asked the mother, Mummy, why is that cabinet empty? And so apparently there was, a story about the partition, and then of course there was a cabinet which was empty, and she said, why is that cabinet empty? And the mother replied, maybe it is like when your father left and he took everything with him. Maybe something like that happened here.
Really goosebumps.
It was those kind of small interactions, things that and all of a sudden, in all my technical, mood that I was going through, I heard, this most moving thing that people were coming, experiencing. And then, of course, through images and photographs and otherwise, we see all kinds of interaction where people see these artwork on a personal level and derive their own meanings out of it, which is what we intended to be.
And we already, I think, have been through so many tough times that art is something that helps to heal all of us together. A lot. Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much, Qudsia, for being on the show. Thank you, Ayesha, across the internet for taking out the time to be with us. Thank you guys for watching. The Biennale is on social media if you want to follow them wherever and, find out about the wonderful programs that they continue to do. If you're an artist or someone who's interested in art, there's something there for you, and it's, it's your very own thing. Yeah, I'm so excited to thinking of that. I feel so cozy. Thank you guys for watching. If you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you next time on The Coffee Table. Bye now.